Dear students, welcome to the online classes program of Higher Education Department, Punjab. It is Department of English Language and Literature of Govt Postgraduate College, Attock. Here, I am Sharif Zahid, Assistant Professor of English. Well, gentlemen, today it's our third lecture. In the previous lecture, we had a brief introduction of the institution, which is Brookfield itself, and an introduction of the main character, who is Mr. Chipping. Today, we shall have the introduction of many other important characters, and among all those, the important one rests Catherine Bridges. Let us have a brief introduction of Catherine Bridges. Miss Bridges was 25 when she met Mr. Chips, who was 48. She was exceedingly beautiful, means most beautiful. She first looked upon him as a quiet, middle-aged and serious-looking man. Looked upon him, she made an opinion about Mr. Chipping that he seems to be a silent person who is of middle age and he is a serious-looking personality. Now about her profession. She was a governess out of job. Nowadays she was jobless, but she had joined the profession of a governess. A governess is a lady whose duties are outside the boundary wall of the house. She had to bring certain things from market. She had to accompany certain children, etc. She rode bicycle, not very much liked by the men of Victorian times. That was the beginning of the modern age. So the girls who rode bicycle were not looked with a good eyes. She had advanced and radical ideas which she learned from Ibsen, Bernard Shaw and William Morris. As she had modern views, and these views she obtained from Henrik Ibsen, a Norwegian writer, George Bernard Shaw and William Morris. All of them are radical. She read them and admired them. Of course, she was fond of all those writers. She could be called a radical socialist. So, following all these modern writers, we may certainly call her as a radical socialist. Her views were even dramatically opposed to those of Mr. Chips. As a matter of fact, Mr. Chips was of conservative nature and conservative views, and she was in the views opposite to Mr. Chipping. She liked Chips and his profession, as we know. She exercised a healthy influence upon him. Although she was impressed by Mr. Chipping, although she liked his profession as well, but she had a very positive influence upon the views of Mr. Chips. She was more intelligent and brainy than him. Of course, she was advanced, intelligent enough. So, as compared to Mr. Chip, she gave him advanced ideas on education, which he demonstrated in his educational practice. She made him learn the fresh views and he applied those fresh views during the course of his teaching. This astonishing girl-wife relationship is girl-wife became very popular at Brookfield. So it is her own achievement that she made a good place among the company of all those teachers as well as students. She contributed a good deal to all school activities, matches, and social and music concerts. And she was herself a fine musician. Of course, she had a good taste as far as music is concerned, but unfortunately, her life was cut short by childbirth. We shall study in detail in the novel. Now, the other important characters in the novel will be the heads of the institution, and among those heads stands first Mr. Weatherby. Mr. Weatherby was the head of that institution at the time when Mr. Chipping joined Brookfield in 1840. He is the person who first interviewed him. There is a very attractive and enjoyable exchange of dialogues between Mr. Chips and Mr. Weatherby. And finally, he employed him, but as a matter of fact, he died in the coming summer vacation in 1870. And when Mr. Chipping went back after the summer vacation and the session started, Mr. Weatherby was no more over there. After Mr. Weatherby came Mr. Meldrum, the head of the Brookfield, but unfortunately, this gentleman also died suddenly in 1900, and being senior one and being well experienced person, Mr. Chips became the acting head of that institution for a while. After him, then came Mr. Ralston. After the death of Mr. Meldrum in 1900, he was appointed as the head of the institution. He was young enough, of 37. He was very energetic. He had lofty aims about his future, and he wanted to rise in life. Even he was not content with the headship of this institution. So, the sooner he got an opportunity to better himself, he left Brookfield. He was very much energetic, no doubt, and he was called a live wire, but he was not loved by the students. Of course, he was obeyed, no doubt. After, when he left the school to better himself, then came Mr. Chatteris, and he became the new head. After Ralston. But as a matter of fact, Mr. Chips fell ill. He resigned from the service, and Mr. Chatteris left school in 1911. After Mr. Chatteris came Mr. Cartwright, head of the Brookfield, and he remained till the death of Mr. Chipping, and finally he was present to pay him respects on the final day. So these were the heads of the institution, and there are certain more personalities as well. Among those, one is Mrs. Wickett. Mrs. Wickett had been the in charge of the linen room at Brookfield, but later on she got money from certain relatives. She left the job. She had bought certain flat which was situated in front of Brookfield, and it was the name of her home as well, after her own name, Mrs. Wickett. And Mr. Chips, after retirement, used to live in that flat with Mrs. Wickett. Now, another character is of Dr. Merivale. Dr. Merivale was the doctor of Mr. Chipping, who used to visit him fortnightly, and he was very professional. He used to encourage him, and he used to call him old boy. So, as it is the need of the profession that every doctor will console the patient, and he used to admire him, that I wish I should have enjoyed such like health as you do enjoy, old boy. These were the words of his doctor. There are certain minor characters who got fame because of Mr. Chipping, and among them is a student, Cooley, who was a red haired boy, and Mr. Chipping used to cut joke about him. Then there was another person who is Mr. Rowden. Mr. Rowden was his colleague, and he had a good friendship with Mr. Chips. Then there is Major Colin Wood. Later on, he became a famous personality, but he was punished by Mr. Chips on climbing the roof of gymnasium. Then there is mentioning of a very short-sized student who is Mr. Forrester, whose height was hardly 4 feet. Then is the last one, Mr. Linford, because he could say and he could boast that I was the last person who met Mr. Chipping before his death, and the moment he was departing from him, he too uttered the same phrase which was uttered by his wife, Catherine Bridges, goodbye, Mr. Chips. This was a brief introduction of the characters of this novel, and thank you very much for happy watching. Stay blessed.